Hello and welcome to the Stringer Podcast number 29. It's been a minute, hasn't it? It's been a crazy couple months, actually. We did another project that brought us to Mexico, it seemed like a million times. We moved offices. Stringer has a new office, and we're still trying to get settled in. And we have Dylan. Hi, we've always had Dylan, but now I'm just telling Dylan that he has to go on the microphone. Hey, Dylan.
I got to talk?
I want you to talk. We got to hear your voice.
This is my voice. I hope everyone likes it. It's not too...
It's smooth.
Too grating?
It's silky, Dill. I'm actually doing this because today's guest, Mike Boon, Toronto Mike, at Toronto Mike on Twitter, and his podcast, Toronto Mic'd, brilliant idea, at Toronto Podcast. That guy gets all the good handles. He kind of called you out in today's podcast for not speaking much. He thought that I didn't allow you to speak, and then that implanted in my brain. I'm like, no, I want to talk to Dylan too. So, Dill, what words of advice do you have to share with the group? What have you just been teaming to get out?
Is this a new rule? Like, I thought I wasn't supposed to talk.
You have to give a new piece of advice every single week. That's what it's going to be. You got to give a new piece of advice every single week. How about we start with this? Upcoming weekend, it's cold out. The snow is coming. I don't really want to go outside. Everyone has rituals when it comes to what movie they want to watch, especially around the holiday season. So give me a suggestion. What movie? You can even give a couple if you want to give top three.
A couple. All right. Well, I think
this gets harder and harder the more we talk about it.
It's December right now, so you want a nice Christmas movie. And I think if we're going to just maybe avoid Die Hard, because Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
It is. It's on definitive lists. That is a Christmas movie.
I'm pretty sure screenwriters have come out and said it is a Christmas movie. So, right from the source. Home Alone. Home Alone's just great. Christmas time. You forget about your kids.
No, you leave them at home. A lot of it filmed in Toronto, almost all of it filmed in Toronto. Harry and Marv, probably the two best villains in Hollywood history.
So great.
Home Alone is an all-time favorite. Do you remember Kevin McAllister's favorite pizza?
No.
Cheese. Oh. Yeah, he had to have... I think so. Someone's going to yell at me if I'm wrong. Pretty sure it's a cheese pizza.
You can make a slate edit there.
No. We'll figure it out. If you guys don't want to stay in this weekend, we do have something you can do. Well, Seat Giant has something you can do. And this is one of my favorite holiday traditions. Well, I can't say it's a tradition because I've only technically been twice. But the Nutcracker. Have you ever seen the Nutcracker, Del?
I have not seen the Nutcracker.
Here's a funny story. I'll tell it quickly. It was a dream of mine for a really long time to go see the Nutcracker. And so I thought it'd be really suave when taking this girl on a date. And I had to track down because Nutcracker tickets are near impossible to get in Toronto. And so I went on Craigslist. I went on Kijiji. I went on all the normal places to try and find tickets. We show up at the Sony Theater of the Performing Arts, and they wouldn't accept our tickets, and I was baffled. I had to take a train all the way out to Oakville just to get these tickets. We showed up at the Sony Theater of Performing Arts, and here they were for a theater in North York.
Oh,
I had dressed up. I was so ready to impress this girl on this date, and I didn't even get tickets to the right theater, and I didn't even mean this to be such a perfect segue, but Seat Giant's got you figured out. They will make sure you know what tickets and what theater you are going to. All you have to do is head over to seatgiant.ca, find what date you want to go, use promo code STRINGER, and you'll save an extra couple bucks on your ticket purchase. That's right. And if ballet is not your thing, hey, I'm not going to judge. Some things aren't my thing. You can still go to Seat Giant. You can look up all your favorite sporting events, concerts. I almost said sports events again. Sporting, you can tell I haven't done this.
Sports.
Sporting events, sports events that encourage people to watch sports.
Musical sports. No, all your favorite concerts, all your favorite sports, all your favorite events going on in the city. And no matter what event you choose, you can always use promo code STRINGER to save an extra couple bucks. Okay, clearly I'm not so down. I'm not so hip with this intro thing. It's been a minute. I'm going to have to figure it out before the next one. So I'm just going to let you be done with me. Be done with Dylan. Say bye, Dylan. Can I talk?
100%. What would you like to say?
Bye.
Dylan says goodbye, and we're going to hook you up right now to Stringer number 29, another crossover episode with Toronto Mic'd. Dill, there's one thing we do. You have to get this right. There's one thing we do between the intro and the interview. You know what that is?
I think I know what this one is. It's the sax.
It's the sax.
Podcast this morning, so I came straight. So Hebsy was at my house 9 to 10 doing his podcast, and then I threw his online and jumped on my bike for the 10 o'clock to get here.
Thank you.
No problem.
That's unbelievable. Toronto Mike on the podcast, really exciting for me because I feel actually I'm going to spend the whole hour feeling like I'm being compared to how you do things. I'm honestly extremely worried because you're 6 years in and all these bumps that I'm still figuring out, you're like, yeah, that's old news. I figured that out ages ago.
Well, the way I say that is I broke all those eggs so you could enjoy an omelet. That's what I say. But yeah, I've made all the mistakes, so at this point I'm trying to find new mistakes to make, which is part of the fun, I guess. But
we have an interesting connection, non-connection, and this is right away one of the first times I heard your pod. Actually, no, I'm going to start here. As soon as I kind of started thinking about doing a podcast and I made a list of all the people, I told myself if I can make a list that's at least 52 people long without repeating, of people that are like within my 1 or 2 degrees to contact, then I believe I have enough to speak to someone and I have enough runway. And then I was maybe 3 or 4 people in, and they're like, "Oh, you're doing the Toronto Mike thing."
Yeah, I've heard this.
I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You haven't heard of Toronto Mike?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "He's had a blog forever, and he's had a podcast for years, and no, you're doing what he's doing." So that's really the touch point. A lot of I've been.
By the way, I'm flattered by this. Of course, I didn't invent anything. I just, running on instinct with some inspirations and stuff. But I do hear this a lot. Like people nowadays are starting a podcast and they're like, "Oh, why don't I have on this media person and have a conversation with them about this and that and play some songs or whatever?" And then, people are like, "Oh, that's the Toronto Mike, like the Toronto
Formula.
Mike blueprint or something."
Exactly.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Like that's how you know you're making some strides. Where they coined a format after you. So cool. Thanks.
Making your own ripple.
Yeah.
Not just I wouldn't even just say within the Toronto landscape, but across Canada and then into the States. Because I've heard you say multiple times when talking with different artists about how Buffalo and Northern New York,
because they get 102.1. It's all about receiving that terrestrial radio frequency. So you're right. There are CanCon bands that I like, these 90s CanCon alt rock bands that I grew up listening to on 102.1 that I still love, and it still blows my mind that, like, for example, like Mo Berg will come over, Ron Hawkins from Lowest to the Low, Rusty, the band Rusty came over. Like, this is all still kind of breaking my brain. I just had Junk House's Tom Wilson just came over, and they were played ad nauseum, if you will. Like, I loved it, but it was played all the time on 102.1 because CanCon regulations, right?
Right.
But if you're in Buffalo, you want to hear Tragically Hip. Tragically Hip's a great example. I haven't had anyone from Tragically Hip over yet, but that's a band that's massive in Buffalo because they were listening to 102.1 from Toronto. Right. So yeah, there's a sphere of influence, and by default now, if you are in that like age range where you were listening to Edge 102 in the 90s, you probably have stumbled upon a couple of Toronto Mic'd episodes, and you might even dig the vibe because you're sort of like an honorary Southern Ontarian Torontonian. Yes.
And so much, it's funny because so much of the formation of who I am and my identity came from Aaron Davis. And from Daryl Dahmer, and came from, and you go over to the Edge, I think of Alan Cross, and I think of Bookie, and all these personalities that, because of terrestrial radio, it's weird to say terrestrial radio.
Yeah, you got it now, because there's internet radio, there's
exactly.
satellite radio is the reason I always say terrestrial radio, yeah.
But because that was my morning, my lunchtime, and my after school, that's just who you were, and these were the people that you felt like you were kicking it with.
Yep.
Because you agreed with them or disagreed with them in your own way, and you interact with them on a personal level, even though it's a one-way conversation.
Well, a big part of this is that the internet was in its youth, and before it became pervasive, if you will. Like, the radio was a much bigger deal, right? Because radio was think about what radio would mean to you if you suddenly got rid of all streaming services and, iTunes and all these things. If they all disappeared right now, and satellite radio, all that disappears right now. Suddenly you're back finding your old transistor radio and tuning in a station to hear, to hear personalities introduce you to music. Like, that's where you're back. Like, it was massive.
That's what I've found as I've crossed over into first my late 20s and my 30s, is my introduction to music isn't the same,
right?
Because I feel radio has taken on a different part of my life where I don't do a lot of driving, but whenever I am driving, I am tuning in the radio, but I don't listen to it in my home like I used to,
right?
And it squeezes off my introduction to new music.
Yeah, well, you're preaching to the choir here. Like, in my home, I have two radios. I have one in the bathroom, because I love to put it on when I'm in the shower, and I have one in the kitchen, which I throw on like on a Sunday morning or whatever, and they're both tuned to CBC Radio 1, and they never leave there unless there's a Blue Jays game on, and I'm going to move the radio to the backyard and listen to a Jays game or whatever. And so right now, that's the only terrestrial radio that, again, I like Metro Morning, I like listening to CBC Radio, and I like the news updates from CBC Radio. And what happened back in the day is I would listen to the Thursday 30. So Edge 102 would have the Thursday 30, often hosted by Martin Streak, but sometimes others. And I would listen to it, and essentially, like, what's new on the Thursday 30? Oh, there's this new song from some new band called, I don't know, the Radiohead or the White Stripes or whatever. And it's like, oh, and then there's another single from that band, and you're going downtown to pick up the CD. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh man, this OK Computer is A-OK. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
OK Computer was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's right. But at least they already had the band. They already had a bunch of hits already.
They
before
had Pablo Honey.
They had Pablo Honey with Creep, right? Which was all over the radio, and that's how they used to slip in swear words. This is a tangent. I do a lot of these, but like, that was exciting to me listening to 102.1, and like, there's a F-bomb, I guess, in the the uncensored version of Creep.
Yep.
And it would slip in all the time. Like, they would play that. Like, and I'd be like, wow, like, I know this
is real radio.
Well, I said Headstones like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Cubically Contained was a big radio hit for Headstones. And I still remember, can you swear on this podcast?
100%.
Okay. Like, paranoid little fuckers. Like, this was a line in the song. And it would be like 6:30 p.m. or something, and I'm listening. And did I just hear paranoid little fuckers? I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, I don't know, that was exciting to me. So radio used to, these Thursday 30s meant something, because it's how you would hear, this Pearl Jam song's still on the charts or whatever, there's a new Tragically Hip, but it was how you kind of heard about what was going on, and then you went and dove deep after you heard the single on the radio.
Martin Streak was great too, because he'd say, introduce the Thursday 30, and he'd say we have 4 new or 6 new, not debuts, but tracks entering the 30 this week.
Right.
The first one coming in at number 30, and then the next one, whatever you find at number 27.
Yeah.
And so it's a cue as you go down.
He's a bit of a guide, he's
completely.
Like, Alan Cross still does this, and Bookie still does this on 88.1, but I miss the days when, you had a guide, like a curator, I want to say. Like, obviously, Martin Streak wasn't picking the songs he played, okay? That hasn't happened since David Marsden was in the building in Brampton or whatever. But you hand him the top 30, and he'd have something to say, like something about, hey, this is a 9 Inch Nails song, and he'd be something about how, they just recorded whatever, and they're coming to the whatever. It it seemed like there was a bit of like a transfer of knowledge, and I learned a lot about an ongoing history of new music, which has been going on forever and still continues, was key here too. But I really like somebody giving me context, like telling me the story around the song, and not just, I'm not there, I didn't want to just hear the song, move on, song. Give me a little something about that. Oh, this band's out of Memphis or whatever, and this guy's dad used to, I don't know, play piano for Elvis Presley. Like, give me something. I love that stuff. That's the shit I love.
Interesting question. You probably know the answer to this. The Canadian content rules, that would apply to the Thursday 30 as well.
Of course. Oh, yeah, it's all
which
day.
Means that they would have to have a strong element of Canadian bands.
Right, but I feel like it's a daily requirement. But yes, definitely. Right. So that's the famous discussion. I had this discussion with Ron Hawkins and Lawrence Nichols of Lowest of the Low just 2 weeks ago.
Just a couple weeks ago.
Just 2 weeks ago, yeah. We had this exact conversation because, and there are a lot of these bands, these 90s can rock bands, would have been crushed by the massive media gorilla that's to the south of our borders.
Right.
If we didn't have these CanCon rules, like how could Sloan, for example, kind of go head to head with, I don't know, Nirvana, like for example, right? But they did. And a lot of it is because the program, the people choosing the music at our FM stations like Edge 102 had a requirement. They had to be compliant to keep their license from the CRTC. So they would be eager to share, I don't know, I'll say headstones, for example, since I'm picking on headstones today. But like, yeah,
promoting.
without a doubt, lowest of the low, without a doubt, which that Shakespeare by Bud album still holds up. I still love that album. Man, it brings me back. But
being released soon, Shakespeare in My Box.
That's correct. That's good for you. Good for you. But all that was helped by CanCon, and I think we're better off for it, to be honest. I like the fact that, the Tragically Hip's talking about, pictures of our parents' prime ministers. Like, this is the kind of stuff I get off on. There's a song called Bob Cajun, but I'm a proud Canadian. I enjoy it.
I'm a very proud Canadian as well. There was a band called Fallacy Flow, and I remember, I think I was in grade 9, 8, and it was a band called Fallacy Flow, and they had this song that dipped into the charts.
Right.
I don't know if it went below 18, and I went out, found their album, and that was a neat thing too. And I don't know enough of the relationships between some of the big labels, the boutique labels, and HMV.
Right.
But I could walk into HMV, and anyone I heard in rotation on 102.1 The Edge, including my friends from high school, their band called Psych, I could walk into the local HMV,
right,
and they would be carrying the CDs. But I found Fallacy Flow, and it went to this, and then I figured out they're from Toronto.
There you go.
Because I'm at whatever age, I don't have this realization that, they have to bring in a certain local element. And then it blew my mind, because what that does is that makes a goal attainable. If I'm a 14-year-old kid in a band, and you're like, this band is on the radio. We're not talking about mansions and cars and anything. We're talking about this band is on the radio. This band has a video on Much Music. That was the moon to me.
Mo Berg told me this himself, that when they started playing I'm an Adult Now on Much Music, it changed everything. That's how they got their record deal. That's why he can, although he has to do a lot of production of other people's music, that's another story I like to dive into, is how our Canadian rock stars, unless you're Michael Bublé and you're cracking in the big market to the south or whatnot, international markets, they're not typically they're not wealthy people. They're struggling to especially pay rent in this city. Like, it's a tough city to be an artist in, even a musician, where, I'm going to see Sloan on Saturday night. I'm going to see Sloan at the Phoenix Concert Series.
No way.
Yeah, like Sloan's got to keep working. They need to keep touring to make money to feed their families and pay their rent. It's tough sledding, but yeah.
I had 2 run-ins with run-ins. I say run-ins, it means I saw them, and they had no idea I existed. But I call that a run-in with Sloan.
Sure.
And
Wait, did you say hi to them?
The second time I did.
Okay, that means you met somebody from Sloan. If you just see someone, you didn't meet anything, you just saw them.
First time, it was The Good and Everyone. Is that The Good and Everyone? Their music video.
2 minute. The airport.
The airport needed extras. And that was what was amazing also about The Edge. They would have these announcements of bands that needed extras. I remember Gob another time in Downsview Park needed extras. And I was like, I'm so down for being in a music video.
Yeah.
And you show up at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And it's just whoever shows up. You don't have to register.
So you did this did you do it for the Sloan one?
So I did it for Sloan.
Amazing.
And then the second time was there was a spot above Tattoo Rock Parlor. I don't think it's still there. It's called the Orange Lounge.
Okay.
They were both a studio and a boutique label. And they, for a few years, hosted these intermittent interactive type events where bands would come in and do an acoustic set, generally, and then answer a bunch of questions in a one-on-one afterwards. And I was fortunate enough to run camera, and this was early in my career, and I kind of knew someone on the inside that got me in. They're like, we'll give you $50, and I'm like, you don't even have to give me $50. I'm
That's
like,
cool.
I'll just show up. And that's the time I got to say hello, and it made my day. But you bring up a perfect point that it's because they had to keep going. Money City Maniacs, they weren't going to, rest on their laurels of that and be set for life.
Well, not even close. I mean, no. Sloan's a great example because they had a long list of Canadian radio hits and Much Music hits. So we'll put radio and Much Music in the same kind of bucket or whatever. But they had a bunch. Like I'm just thinking from the time I heard Underwhelmed on 102, like all the way through the 2000s, they had hits, big hits. But where did they make their money, right? They were making their money by hitting the road and people buying tickets. Like I bought for the Phoenix on Saturday night. It's I'm telling you, that's something. It's like I was thinking, do I make a call to Chris Murphy's been over? Like, can I make a call and get on a list, or do I just buy the stupid ticket? The guy, they need the money. Like, let's support him or whatever.
Support artists, and I think of that a lot. And it might be I'm just at the wrong age for downloading, like for the Napster, LimeWire, all that
young?
I think I was on the other side of it,
okay.
where I could do it, but I was like, or I could just spend $18, get the album, know that they make a piece of that, and have the liner notes, and not have to burn my own.
I'm with you, man. That's a tough one. That's a whole ethical discussion. But at some point, I was cherry picking by the band. Like, so Sloan, for example, I was still buying their CDs right up until I was done with CDs. I was still buying the CDs. But if I heard a song, I don't know, what's a good example? Like Alien Ant Farm would cover Michael Jackson or whatever. Like I didn't want to go spend $20 on that disc, and that song probably would find its way to me through some nefarious means. LimeWire,
unbeknownst,
Napster,
it would just show up on your computer.
I don't know, man.
Morning.
Maybe some gremlins would come in on my computer and
after
do that.
After a 36-minute download, because that's how long 5 megabytes took back in the day.
So, I mean, tragically hit Pearl Jam. There were certain bands I always bought the CD, but yeah, there were exceptions. But
Alien Ant Farm is part of a really interesting phase in music that got really angsty and angry for a while, but at the same time like to mix themselves with Michael Jackson. It created this neat little pool. I went Project Wise. They were a Canadian band. I was doing research for an upcoming shoot that we have, and I remember one of their music videos used this technique, and so here I went down a Project Wise like rabbit hole, trying to figure out how they did this thing, and then it led to all of this music from the late 90s that I remember, and then I just can't climb out of it, which I think you look at a band, and I might not be going far enough back, but Limp Bizkit was kind of on the front of that
new metal.
Yeah,
NU. You have to spell new NU. But I mean, I always joke. True story that I saw Eminem at the Dome. So I saw Limp Bizkit at the Dome, and Eminem opened. I saw Papa Roach, and then Eminem, and then Limp Bizkit, and it's like, you had to be there, because now when you tell the story, like people kind of like cringe, like, oh man, that's so not cool. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like you're thinking of it like with your 2018 brain, but like in '99 or 2000, it was okay to like Limp Bizkit. Like it was all over.
It was great.
It was break stuff and all this stuff. That $3 bill, y'all. Like it was fine. I still throw on that cover of Faith, because Alien Ant Farm. You mentioned Alien. I mentioned Alien Ant Farm. Well,
I'll take it. I mentioned Alien
But that's,
Ant Farm.
Of course, Smooth Criminal is their big hit, which is a Michael Jackson song. The first song I ever heard from Limp Bizkit was Faith by George Michael's Faith.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I don't care how uncool it makes me. You throw on Faith by Limp Bizkit and turn it up to 11 or whatever. My heart's going, man. I'm down with it. Like, it's still killer.
Yeah, I think it's the best cover of that song out there, because I think there's people do renditions and people do covers, like people do a version that's very close to the original, but they kind of turned it on its head. Papa Roach is hilarious that you say that, just because I thought that was like the height of guitar playing, because here I was a young
Last
guitar
Resort,
player.
man, go put it on right now. I'm telling you, it's all my bias coming through here, but Last Resort still kicks ass. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And then you evolve out of that, and I think the next... Well, we had Evanescence. Remember Evanescence?
Of course.
Where they then have this like delicate yet strong, incredibly strong female vocalist.
What band? Slipknot, which was really heavy, but I still liked them because they kept a melody in that. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't like the wall of sound unless it had a melody in there. Mm-hmm. And I found it in Slipknot. There was a lot of Slipknot songs I quite liked.
They had good singers.
Do they do Wait and Bleed? Is that Slipknot? Wait and Bleed? I know. I feel like I just got my first smart speaker, and all day long I work from home, and all day long I'll have a thought like that will go in my head, and I'll say it, and I'd say it, but my phone will probably answer.
It is.
Okay, Google. Is Slipknot's hit Wait and Bleed? We have an official. By the way, can I tell people about the setup here?
I would love for you to.
You have a guy. Like there's a guy here.
I have a Dylan.
So Dylan doesn't get to talk on the mic. He just does.
He has a microphone.
But he lets you do all the...
He's welcome to talk on the mic whenever he wants.
It's just honestly, because I do all that. I do your part and Dylan's part all myself. And I'm just watching, like, you've divvied up the duties.
I have a Dylan, and that's only because...
You can just focus on talking to me.
I realized I can't talk... I don't know how you do what you do.
It's fun.
Especially when you kick out the jams.
Yeah,
because
it's a lot of work.
You're playing through so many tracks. Just the other day, we were trying something new with the board and the computer and stuff, and I had the mic, and I could not coordinate my left hand and my right hand while speaking to line something up.
I'm actually, I'm going to toot my own horn and tell you, I've become very, very good at this. You're right. So you're not only are you... Because I don't do any editing. I don't know if you'll do any editing, but I don't do any editing. So it's all completely live to tape. And I've become quite good, I think, at like there's no awkward pauses or like the mistakes we have are kind of authentic and they I keep them. But like I'm doing the conversation, moving that forward with the audio elements and real time. I'm not adding these audio later. We're all listening in our headphones at real time. But at the same time, of course, I'm watching the levels. So I want to make sure, get on that mic. I might have to say that once in a while because it's not unedited. But
get them to lean right in.
Things, yeah. And I'm always watching my waveform. Like I'm doing all of this kind of. I find it fun. Like I really can't imagine. I mean, what you're doing now, which is great. You're just talking to me and working on the content. Although I see no notes. See, I have a tablet in front of me with like bullet points. Like for example, if Dave Hodge is coming over, I'll have a bullet point pen flip. Okay, like I'm not just in case we get off on a tangent.
Just the famous pen flip back. Is that the one you're talking about?
There's only one Dave Hodge pen flip, 86, I want to say, but it was big in the news this week because Dave Hodge made his triumphant return to Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday night when they had the Blue Jackets, and that's the first time he's been on since he flipped the pen. So, for example, Dave Hodge is an example because Dave Hodge happens to be a crazy music fan. I'm not saying he's crazy and a music fan. He's a crazy music fan.
He's crazy
and
about music.
You go to the Phoenix tonight and somebody's in town of anyone of note, and I'm not talking the mainstream. He's not ACC to see Smashing Pumpkins like me, okay? He's at whatever. He'll be at, like, I'll use the Horseshoe as the example. He's at the Horseshoe to see some up-and-coming band out of Memphis or whatever that he's been hearing about or whatever. And he's in the front row, and he's there going hard. Like, he's a big-time music nut and very knowledgeable. And we could get on a tangent about music, and we could go off for half an hour talking about music, and then I could look at my clock and say, oh, crap, the great Dave Hodge only had an hour. And next thing you know it, we're talking about the Reporters, and then I'm signing off, and I won't sleep that night because I'll be lying in bed thinking, Mike, you forgot to ask Dave. You had Dave Hodge in your basement, and you forgot to ask him about the pen flip. And that's why I have bullets on the don't forget these points. And I make sure I'm always glancing at my tablet just to make sure I don't miss those points, because I cannot have that happen where I had Dave Hodge in my basement and did not ask him about the pen flip.
So this is interesting, and I want to jam on this for a quick sec because I want to know your approach, because my approach was always, I had conducted interviews, and I still conduct interviews with sports personalities, and I've done it now for...
Oh, like professional athletes?
Yeah, athletes for about 10 years now.
I've never done, okay.
And for me, every interview was always leading to something. Yeah. Like, I was always driving a story. I was always driving a point, and it is, in its own way, tiring, because some days they don't want to talk about that thing that you're told to go out and talk to them about. And what I really wanted was to enjoy the ability of conversing with someone, especially the people I met along the way, for me, without that constraint of, I have to get to this point. I have to go this way. Because so many times, all I want to do is just see that you went off on a lowest of the low tangent, and I could spend 40 more minutes there, and I will have had the best day of my life.
Well, yeah, again, stop preaching to the choir. They're already converted. But but I will say, so firstly, I I've done 401 episodes of Toronto.
Congratulations on 400.
Oh, thank you.
That was fun to have everyone.
It's 400 milestone. I treated it like one, but then I thought, like, somebody made a point, like, okay, well, you just did a 300 thing. Now you're doing 400 thing. Like, maybe these should just be every 500 or something like that. So I will do a 500 thing, and then I might just shut up until 1,000. That's what I might do.
Well, I think it's like anniversaries with a loved one, in the sense that at the very beginning, you see my cousin did a 2-week anniversary of dating.
Wow.
And then it's
that's a little sad,
it's our
actually.
1 month, and then it's our 3 month, and then it's our 6 month. And at a certain time, you're like, we go with marriage anniversaries, and it's once a year, and that's it.
Your cousin might need to see a therapist, I think. There's some issues, underlying issues.
It's cute.
It's almost, yeah, it's cute if you're like 7 or 8 years old, maybe, but not my place to judge. But professional athlete, so in 401 episodes, I have a professional athlete scheduled soon, which will break this streak. I'm almost thinking cancel that. Keep your streak going. I've never spoken once with a professional athlete. Not one interview as a professional athlete. And I've never, not even like a Nick Kiprios, who is now
a former athlete.
Yes, not even a former professional athlete. Not one. Now, Ray Ferraro is coming over in January. But this gentleman, Stephen Caldwell, who's was captain of
Toronto FC.
Yeah.
Good friend of the show.
Is
we'll
he?
call him Stephen Caldwell.
He's okay, well, because he's coming over Monday.
No
I've never
way.
met him. He's coming over Monday. So he's a friend of yours. If he's a friend of yours, or
very,
Dylan?
very good friend of ours.
What can you tell me about him? Because I need to do a little homework. You know, I do my homework. I haven't started it yet.
Stephen Caldwell's incredible. So he played a bunch over in England, bouncing between the top 2 leagues, tiers of the league. So the Championship and the Premiership. He's played in Champions League, which is without question next to the World Cup, the biggest tournament in the world. Champions League gets so much attention. He came over here in 2013, and he almost immediately was made captain of the club. He had played, I believe, with the coach at the time of Toronto FC, who was Ryan Nelson, and that's where he and I first met, was in 2013, because I was doing a documentary series with Toronto FC.
Cool.
And then he ended up retiring in 2015 after an injury in the second game of the year, kind of sidelined him, and then in July they announced his retirement. And I was fortunate enough to be there during the announcement of his retirement, and I didn't conduct the interview, but I was there for the interview when he was retired. He has 2 incredible boys, completely different personalities, and at the World Cup, during the World Cup this year, we got to see that come to light, because we did a bunch of content with Steven, including them playing FIFA matches of upcoming games, Steven with one of his boys, and you see how completely different they are, and also what a terrible FIFA player Steven is.
Okay, interesting. Small world. Oh, it is a small world. Everyone's connected in this small little Canadian media hub. But he's a TSN guy now, right? Stephen Caldwell. So so that's I have 2 episodes before that, so I haven't turned my brain switch to Stephen Caldwell, because I've got a Wednesday night. And then I got a Saturday, actually, which I try not to do. But then, Monday is Stephen Caldwell. So,
that's
so what was it going? Yeah, so I haven't had a professional athlete, but that streak probably ends Monday, unless Stephen bails on me. And
he won't. He's good. He's
and
solid.
I'm with you on the whole. The kind of part of the reason that Toronto Mike even exists is because I was personally tired of a person coming on to simply promote one thing. Like, you get your 2 to 5 minutes, or if you're lucky, maybe 7, but really, everything's driving this one thing that they're promoting. Like, like if Molly Johnston wants to promote her Kensington Market Jazz Festival.
I'm sorry I missed it. It was in September, right?
September. It was September. She wants to talk about that, which is great. Talk about how many great musicians will be there, how it works. You know, you give what you can. She'll do the whole spiel. Tell people how what the dates are. Pound home that you need to come to the Kensington Market Jazz Festival. Like, that's really, like, personally, I felt like that's a very shallow and empty dive with somebody who probably has interesting things to say, if somebody could extract those interesting things. So imagine you had an hour with that person, and you will eventually get to the Kensington Market Jazz Festival, and that will be discussed. But many other things on their career and experiences will be discussed as well.
So you brought up Molly, and so I want to further the conversation in this way.
you would say we have Luca who does some minor editing for us. Just make sure we get it to around our goal time, which is 56 to 60 minutes. Okay. And then also I might drop the ball, or I might say a name when I shouldn't say a name. It just in conversation because everything's dialogue. And then I'll ask Luca, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you just remove that name? Because it's not fair of me to include them when I didn't ask them first. But you do everything unedited. When has that been a challenge? And you brought up Molly. When's that been a challenge for you? And maybe you've questioned that idea as to whether you should or you shouldn't.
That's the only time at Molly. So the Molly, she had an hour. We recorded an hour, I believe, and it went kind of south on me in a few ways. It went sideways on me, as you say. And I had never experienced it before or since. And that's the only time I had a thought of like, okay, like what do I do with this hour recording? Normally I just throw it online 15 minutes after the guest leaves and get ready for the next one or whatever. And that Molly episode, I did a little like noodling. Is that an expression?
No, noodling completely.
I was noodling this.
You noodled it.
Do I edit it into some kind of a digestible package of 30 minutes or something? Do I release it as it is without context, which I thought I don't think that'll work. And then I ended up doing like a small post. I recorded a small bit at the beginning where I introduced it, and then I talked to the listeners and explained that, Molly's not here. She just left. This is what happened before we press record, and here's what you can expect from the next hour. But here it is unedited because I didn't edit a second out of it. And then I let it roll. So that's the only time I thought about hacking it up into something palatable.
When you received all listener feedback and praise and love from your community for episode 400, over and over again you received support for that Molly interview. Yeah. Why do you think that, looking back retrospectively? Because I have an idea, but I'm curious why you think you received so much support.
I think a lot of people listening in real time to the Molly Johnston episode, possibly they thought maybe I should have just like ended it or like kicked her out. Not kicked her out, but like maybe politely just said, I clearly you don't want to do this, we'll do it another day. Or maybe be not mean to her, but sort of like, I'm not sure. I think a lot of people in real time are kind of living it through me somehow. And they're kind of like, I guess at some point I do like a reset where I call her out on it. And I think a lot of people are very satisfied by that moment. And I think maybe a lot of people are on some level like proud of the way like I didn't like lose my cool, or I hung in there and I tried to salvage it, and a lot of people, quite frankly, if you're a regular listener, you probably felt bad for me because you've heard hundreds of episodes and then suddenly you hear someone being mean to me for the first time. So I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts though, because I'm so close to this and now I don't know. I'm just...
Well, I think you nailed everything. I don't have to say anything anymore. No, this is how good you are of doing everything in the room, is that you can even say the things that I wanted to say. You don't even need me here. This is
called
incredible.
Empathy. I was putting myself in your position.
What I appreciated from it, and what I think people clung on to, was two sides of it. First, you identified it that at a certain point, a lot of times in our life we'll walk away from a situation and in our head be like, man, I really wish I said this. Not that we want to put someone down, but we want to let them know that they aren't being open and engaging and a participant in a situation where they should be.
Right.
And I think you didn't walk away and think about that, but you had the presence of mind to bring it up and just kind of in a way that's completely kind and just so you just let her know that she's not participating in something in which you thought would be engaging and good for both sides. I think if I can continue, I think the second part too is that you also showed humility in it, in things that you then apologize for. You're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have put something this way. Maybe I should have said it something else. So it's really two sides of a coin, and the person we all wish we were. The one who can stand up for what they think is the right way to conduct themselves, and at the same time, the one who can recognize in themselves when they could have contributed more, and you did it perfectly all in 1 hour.
I definitely wish I could have shared the thought process in real time, like, because I was having this real thought with myself as I'm talking to Molly, who clearly doesn't want to talk to me. I had this thought of wrapping it up and just like setting her free. Like I was really, really close. And then my brain went to this whole like, what if you could save this heaping pile of shite? Like, what if you could make some chicken salad out of this chicken shit? Like, wouldn't that, like, could you do that? Like, it was almost like, could you do that? And I'm like, well, maybe I should try. And then I did the reset. But funny thing is, in that reset, I said these exact words. I said, I was getting a diva-like vibe. I think that's how I phrased it. I was getting a diva-like vibe. And this is where the brand new low was discovered from the use of the word diva. Because I said I was getting a diva-like vibe. And interestingly, is like when things were bad and they went worse and then they got better and then got bad again, and then I reset it and then used the D word, and then it found its new bottom, but it seemed to bounce off the bottom. And then, anyway, it's funny that this episode has become this notorious episode, because what's happening, I think, because I'm doing, like, for some reason I'm being invited to talk to, like, college classes and, like, media classes at, like, you know, Humber or Durham College. And Molly Johnston typically comes up because it's a unique episode. And then I realize I'm telling a bunch of people to go listen to make Molly Johnston their first episode of Toronto Mike, where
welcome to me,
right, which is nothing like any of the other episodes, and really it's not me doing what I think I do best. I'm way off my game. Listen, because it's like a case study, and I find it's kind of interesting to listen to and hear it in real time. But don't judge the series on the Molly Johnston episode,
not at all,
because none of the episodes are like that. So,
what do you enjoy, and what influenced the fact that you wanted to develop Toronto Mike into an interview style? Because you and Rosie, you had your own dynamic off the top.
Yeah, I think at the beginning it was just me and somebody I have good chemistry with shooting the shit. And it was mainly because I had never done any broadcasting of any form, and I needed to, like, figure it out. Like, I needed to get better, so I needed to do episodes to get better. And the first bunch, like with Rosie, are just, we'll talk about whatever. And I was still figuring out how you use a microphone, and, you know, and honestly, the back end stuff too. Like, I needed to work on, like, what Dylan's doing here. Like, that I don't have any formal training. I'm all self-taught and all that.
So do I. I definitely have to work on that.
Well, the best way to do it is record episodes. So I just kept getting better and better. And I mean, the first 19 episodes, I think, I didn't even have my own studio. Like, I did it all at Humble and Fred's studio.
Oh,
the
no
first
way.
19, yeah. Because I wasn't even sure if I didn't want to invest real dollars in it until I realized I was going to actually stick with it or whatever. And those guys were tight, so they said, hey, you can use our studio. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I think episode 20 is the first time I brought it into my own home studio. But it's been ridiculously satisfying, because often I'll leave these episodes almost like I'm high. Like, I keep referring to 399 with Tom Wilson, because there was a end of recent Lowest of the Low. There was a legit high that I get off of it. Just something about the real talk, and when you click with someone and you extract these interesting things. My target audience is myself. Like, all this is me baking something that I would want to listen to. Like, this is what I would like to listen to. And really, I still kind of true to that. Like, every guest I have is because that's somebody I'd want to hear about, you know? So it's like, I just serve myself, and then hope people hang with me. So,
can we talk about Kick It the Jams? Because I've brought it up and you've brought it up.
Yeah.
But in case someone is silly enough and hasn't listened,
well, there's lots of them,
to an episode where you kicked it the jams, the idea is, do they bring a list of 10?
Okay. So the quick superhero origin story is that I'm on Twitter, and I'm the guy who likes Mike Wilner. If you're looking for that guy, that's me. Okay. I like him as a person, and I like him on JStalk, and I like him when he calls Blue Jay games, and I like him on Twitter. I'm probably the charter member, maybe the only member of the Mike Wilner fan club. What do I know? I like the guy quite a bit. He's been on a few times too. He's coming on again soon. But so Wilner, he came to one of my events. That's how great a guy Mike Wilner is. But Wilner was tweeting about Pearl Jam's 10, the album, okay, which is one of my favorite albums of all time, because I was a perfect age when it came out, because I'm a little older than you guys. So Pearl Jam 10, he's tweeting, and I was thinking, my first thought is, I thought he was kind of like an 80s Duran Duran guy. Like, that's kind of cool for Wilner. Like I'm thinking, I'm just like having this, like, I call it shower thoughts. I'm just thinking, Wilner loves Pearl Jam's 10. I would never have guessed that in a million years. Wow. Then I have this thought. What other stuff does Wilner love? And then from this Wilner tweet, I start having this like fantasy in my head where guests come back to me to play and discuss their 10 favorite songs of all time. Like, this is the story. And I'm like, imagine like a guest like Wilner coming back and we play his 10 songs. And then while I play them, they react to the songs. They tell me a story about, oh, this is the song I listened to when I first kissed my wife. I get chills thinking about it. Like, so again, I'm my own target audience. I would eat this. This is the kind of show that tends, the Kicking Out the Jams is the kind of show I would devour. Like, I would love this show. It's so much up my alley. And I love this idea of like a sports media person like Mike Wilner. We're not talking about Jays at all. We'll talk about Pearl Jam, Duran Duran, whatever. Like, I love that idea too. And I'm like, I started with I remember I sent out a few invitations to, Hebsy was one of them, Wilner, and just a few people. And I explained the premise and I said, would you be interested? And I got a few people reply. I think I sent out to, I don't know, 10 people who had been on the show already. And if 3 of them, I guess, replied back and said, I'm down. And I started booking them. And I said, just before you come over, I need it, and please give me a little time with this list.
So
send me a list.
Because
send me your list of your 10 favorite songs of all time. I will source out the MP3 files and load them into my soundboard so that this is not post. We're not adding these songs in post. This is happening in real time. So they put the headphones on, the Sennheisers are on their head, and we're listening to, I don't know, Won't Get Fooled Again by The Who. And you know that great, scream or whatever from Doubletree. I almost called him Robert Plant. That's another guy who screams, okay? I don't remember the 70s, man. I was very young. So anyway,
it was just the haze.
And Alan Cross,
deep haze.
Right? Imagine Alan Cross sitting there as you listen to the opening of "Won't Get Fooled Again," and Alan Cross telling you that's the greatest scream in rock and roll history, right there. And just talking about there had been Pete Townshend on the guitar doing this, and then suddenly he's talking about the song as we listen, and he's saying, when I first heard this song in Winnipeg on my transistor radio, my brain exploded. Whatever it is. I love it, man, and I've done like 60 of these episodes.
Holy
and I get flack from people who wanted the typical episode, which is like a 90-minute deep dive, because here I am spending an hour listening to songs and stuff, and I just shut out the haters. I'm like, you don't have to listen. Skip the Kick Out the Jams, but I'm not going to stop doing this because it's way too much damn fun. So,
and it is exactly what we spoke about earlier, with someone contextualizing a song and a playlist and why it's important, and providing that feedback that you love to listen to for so long.
It's funny that Dylan's here, okay? Because a favorite amongst many 50-something sports media people is Bob Dylan. He comes up all the time. I know, big shocker.
Get out.
But there's a guy more popular than Dylan.
Springsteen,
100%. And I mean, I don't know, I'll think like a Steve Simmons, for example, or Brad Fay, who says he tells me he's seen him like 100 times, Springsteen.
Holy smokes.
Damian Cox. Like, these, I'm just thinking
Leafs general manager Kyle Dubas. Bruce Springsteen, by far.
Is that right? Because he seems awfully young for Springsteen.
When he was in this, the GM of the Sioux Greyhounds, he had Springsteen posters framed in his office.
Because, what is he, 34 or something like that?
About 34, 35.
Okay, so I'm doing the math in my head, because when I was a kid, the big album was Born in the USA. So I always say, I was raised on Born in the USA, Bruce, where all these 50-something-year-old sports guys, they were all raised on, like, Nebraska, like the 70s Bruce. There's a whole 70s Bruce, and then there's the Born in the USA Bruce, and then there's the... Brilliant Disguise kind of chilled out Bruce, and then whatever. So I'm surprised. That's interesting.
Before, you must have this inner clock that goes off when you know about how much time you've been
Well, it's not an inner clock because I'm staring at the damn I'm staring at the waveform all the time, so I know exactly where I'm at. But here's one thing I'll say, if you're playing me off, that's cool, because you do an hour, you said?
I do an hour, but I have one more question before we go. You have the guys at Great Lakes Brewery, which have been amazing. You have Palma Pasta.
Palma is actually that's the matriarch of the Petrucci family. Is Palma. That's her name. And
had I had a notepad in front of me, you see, I would have not messed this up.
And we're way
Parma, like Parmesan.
No. So we're east of Young, as I say. So Palma Pasta probably not well known actually east of Yonge, but in the west end of Toronto, and people especially in like Mississauga and Oakville, for example, Palma Pasta is a big deal. Like they got 4 locations now, and amazing. But what I really like about both Great Lakes and Palma Pasta and other sponsors, I love these family-run businesses. Like, these are not conglomerate corporations or whatever. These are like, there's a real ma and pa thing going on, but they kick ass at what they do. Like the Great Lakes guys, they have quality craft beer that's ridiculously fresh, even in East York, and you can go to a LCBO and see that the Great Lakes was like canned like 2 or 3 days ago. Like, it's insane. And Palma Pasta is the same deal. Like, they're just quality. So it's like, I just love aligning with these brands, and yeah, I'm lucky to have them as sponsors.
PayTM's really interesting. I think I want to look into it just on the tech part of my
brain. Get the $10 promo code Toronto Mike when you do your first bill payment. You get $10. I mean, honestly, you can install the app at paytm.ca and then set it up, which doesn't take any time at all. Make a bill payment, pay your hydro or whatever. Use the promo code Toronto Mike. Suddenly, they give you this $10 in PayTM cash. Put that on another bill. So now your $50 bill, you only paid $40. It's done, and then you don't have to. Then whatever, you might like the experience and keep going, but if not, you at least it was worth $10. Like, that's what I always say.
The technology side of it is really interesting. Yep. Like, I want to go and use the promo code just so that I can figure out, okay, how does this work? Because it seems really smart, and I don't know why we're not doing this already. Like, why can't I just do it this way?
And also, and this is, I don't mean to do an ad here, because they didn't pay me to do an ad here, but I will just say that I do like getting points on my MasterCard. So I get President's Choice points that I literally go to No Frills, and I'll buy like $31 worth of groceries and give them $1. This is how, if I, because I put the way I get my points is everything, and I have a lot of bills, of course. I got lots of kids and lots of things going on. Every bill I pay in a month, I pay on my MasterCard. Well, a lot of places like property taxes and stuff, they don't even accept MasterCard, but the way I do it is using PayTM as my conduit or whatever. Right. So I use every bill I have to pay in a month, excluding my credit card bill, goes on my credit card. And then once a month I get a credit card bill, and I pay that with my bank account through PayTM. So boom, just try not to put more on your credit card than you can afford to pay each month, and it's all good.
That's life advice.
That's life advice. Don't pay credit card interest rates. They are insane. And don't use a credit card unless you could pay it 100% every month.
18-year-old Clay would have loved to learn that. I don't know why I didn't
people
know.
are stupid. They think, I just got to make the minimum payment. No, you pay interest on the whole thing unless you pay all of it. You got to pay every penny of that off every single month.
And that's why it's great. And that's why it's great that it gives you that number in the top left corner. It's like, your bill as of the billing date is $29.13 or whatever it is. Yeah. And that was my most recent one. And you have 3 weeks to pay the full amount, and we are interest free. You will be happy.
Yeah, it's free money if you pay it off in that 3 weeks. And otherwise, it's the most expensive money you're ever gonna.
Or you can pay $10, and we're gonna slap you with this mean bill afterwards, which is called interest.
Yeah, it's insane, and credit card debt is the worst. And I feel sorry, like in my hood, like in my neighborhood, which is like this, except on the other side of the city or whatever. Because I like how south you are. It was a very easy bike ride because it's on the Waterfront Trail. But I see a lot of like payday loan. What do you call that? Payday loan places have. That's the worst. That's preying on the most vulnerable amongst us. And when you're at a point where you need to do that, like, we gotta like come talk to me, and I'll do my best to help you. Like, I can't give you money or a job, but there's got to be it's worse. So the credit card debt is awful. The payday loans is as bad, maybe worse.
It's almost it feels like extortion. That it's like, I'll help you out, but the cost is just about going to cripple you.
In the compounding interest and on, and you can't get out of debt because anyway, this is now a new show, but I know you were wrapping up there.
Well, what I was going to ask you is your ability to. So there's like 2 ways that 98% of podcasts handle sponsors. Okay. One that I have found.
Now I'm learning.
One is like a 60-second read where they come into it. They're like. And don't forget, whenever I want to buy a new mattress, I always use Mattress King, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, a lot of
mattresses. The second way is a roll-in, right? We're like, when we come back after the break, we're going to have Toronto Mike here first, and this is like the radio way. First,
right, it's like an ad break, and then you have canned ads or whatever.
What I love is that you will have one of the people that you have been working with come in and ask your guest a question. You'll have a
Brian
pre-recorded
Curtis. I should
question.
say, like, if he's listening, propertyinthe6.com, any Toronto real estate requirements. He's been a long time sponsor. You're right. And there's a new sponsor, Fast Time Watch and Jewelry Repair, another family-run business in
Sears,
Richmond Hill.
right?
They were the Sears. Whenever you went to Sears, it got your watch repaired done or your battery changed. That was them, but they weren't allowed to be called what they were because
Right.
Sears had these rules. And then Sears,
They saved my butt
to be honest,
so many times.
Sears effed them because suddenly they're gone. And now these guys who have been around for 30 years don't have any bricks and mortar. They don't have any location. So now they're building up now they have locations in the GTA, including a new one in Richmond Hill. And I mean, Milan there, who's been on the show we just talked sports media and people loved it. Like just hearing, he's a smart, well-spoken guy and he loves sports media stuff like Bob McCowan, Primetime Sports or whatever. So he now once in a while when I have a sports media person on, he'll like send in a question himself because he loved how Brian did that. Brian's got a jingle. He asks, I got Damian Cox coming in next week. Brian's already getting his Damian Cox question ready because he's going to be asking probably about tennis because those two guys, Brian and Damien, both love tennis. I bet you that's what it's about. But yeah, I try to work of each sponsor, like what works for them. Palma gives a free lasagna to every guest. Great Lakes Brewery gives a free 6-pack of their beer to every guest. Brian asks a question. Milan's going to give away something. He's a fast time guy. He hasn't figured out what yet, but he likes to. We do a thing called Remember the Time. On this day, this happened, and that's brought to you by Fast Time. And then PayTM has the $10 they give everyone who uses the promo code, which is cool. That's the only sponsor I have that's not a family-run business because they're enormous in India, for example, but they're an enormous finance company. But Census Design Build, another family-run independent shop, we got to work on something creative for them. But yeah, there's it's been great with the sponsor.
I love and I think this wasn't even a question. What a terrible question. Because really, I was just setting myself up to say, I love how you do that, and I think it stands out and is different than everyone else, and that's what's important. That's real value add.
Do you know why it's different? You want to know why it's different? Because I'm too ignorant to know the blueprint and how things should be done. You said you've worked in sports media or whatever for like 15 years or something like that, right? So you've kind of been on the inside mainstream media for a while. You kind of see how it's done. A lot of people go to school for this because I've been talking to these classes. I studied English and history at U of T, okay?
We didn't go to school now to listen to you, which is incredible.
which is amazing. But only colleges I noticed. Where's the university? It's not coming. But oh man, that was a terrible drive to Oshawa too. I still have like PTSD from that. That was a long drive. But all this is to say, I don't know how things should be done. I just know how I instinctively think that they should be done and how I would like them done. And it's all because I'm my own target audience and I'm running on passion and instinct and breaking those eggs so you can enjoy your omelette.
And that's what Toronto Mike, out of this, the Toronto Mike Digital Services, it came out of that idea, is that you have these just ways of thinking through something, and you can help and bring that to someone else.
Yeah, honestly, Mark Hebscher, I brought him up a few times because just before I biked here, I said goodbye to him at my front door because he comes over although it's Tuesday. I blew him off yesterday because I do this corporate podcasting, which is amazing. Like, if you have like a finance company, for example, with lots of clientele, for example, you record podcasts exclusive for them and you would have your experts on different things. Like we talked about gold yesterday, like investing in gold, and you have a mining expert on. And it's fascinating that podcasting is this modern communication tool, and I handle the A to Z. Like if you just have the content, I take care of every other part, from the recording, the microphones, to the editing, to the hosting, to everything from A to Z. You just bring the content. So it's been kind of rewarding to do. So Hebsy came over today, but normally Monday and Fridays because I do Hebsy on sports with him at TMDS, which is Toronto Mike Digital Services. And I'm looking, I'm looking to acquire new customers because it's a very new business, and I have 4 children. I got to feed these kids. So anyone looking for a podcast, even just meet me, pick my brain, or have a coffee or whatever, reach out. Yeah, Toronto Mike, reach out.
I think when I look back. Now, it's only been 29 episodes, so it's not like I have hundreds to look through. But one string between everyone that I've noticed is I am drawn to people who are self-starters and who create their own thing. And
me too.
Don't know if there's any better example than you, and I love that. said at the beginning, and it's so funny that I'm able to bookend this conversation this way. I said, we have one point of contact in our past, and that's Humble and Fred.
Oh, okay.
And they don't know who I am. But I was 17. I was grade 11, so 17 years old, and it was Take Your Kid to Work Day.
Okay.
And I had decided that I didn't want to pursue in any way my father's profession. And so I reached out to 102.1 The Edge. And I was like, hey, guys, we have this coming up. I would really actually have to come in and shadow someone there.
Right.
And no response. A couple weeks later, I'm like, hey, guys, I'm an eager kid in Newmarket, Ontario.
Yeah.
I can make my way down. I'd really like to shadow someone there. And then the director of marketing at the time said, okay, you can come in and shadow me. And we started our morning by being able to go and watch the Humble and Fred show when they're on the Young Street Studios,
right.
and they had Bare Naked Ladies in at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I was over the moon. And as the day progressed, I kind of went through a marketing day. They asked me, this is probably a pretty smart ask of them, but leading up, they're like, do you play guitar? Teenager listening to 102.1 The Edge. Yes, I probably play guitar. They're like, bring it down. We have some stuff you can do. They put me in a booth, and they had me record a jingle for the snow report for Blue Mountain.
Right. Yeah.
I had to record and do that, and which I thought was incredible. And they paid me like $100 and gave me a free CD of Offspring before it came out. And I was like, this is the coolest job in the world. And I got to end the day by sitting with...
Is it Smash?
Alan Cross. No, it was after Smash.
Okay.
It was...
The Hombres one, right?
No, after that.
Oh.
It was the one with
my
Pretty Fly for a White Guy on it.
Oh, my condolences.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your story. I need the details. That's the other thing.
No, it's not the good
details,
ones, Mike. It's after that.
People say details don't matter. Just get to the story. No, I want the details in the story. So, okay.
It was the one with Pretty Fly for a White Guy.
Right.
But I got it like 3 weeks before it came out, was released, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I ended the day sitting with Alan Cross,
nice.
or rather his producer, as he recorded History and New Music. And from right away when I heard that you worked very closely with Humble and Fred,
yep.
and that's really where some of your self-training came from.
Oh, without a doubt. Heavily influenced by watching those guys start their... I mean, I was doing their back end since 2006, so it's a long time working with those guys, and they do it every day. Every day. They take Fridays off, I noticed, but at the beginning, like I was in there for the first 2 weeks. I designed the back end, like the infrastructure. I basically, they knew how to create their content, but they also knew how to create the MP3 file. But that's where they didn't know what to do with it, and then I take it from there. I learned a lot about the back end. Like I always say, there's probably no Toronto Mike today without there being Humble and Fred podcasting. So there are huge influences, but they're actually pretty generous with giving me credit, because I heard as recently as yesterday, I heard Howard saying that there would be no Humble and Fred podcast without Toronto Mike. So they're pretty sweet back and forth. So yeah, but that's a funny small story.
I don't think there would be, like, I wouldn't have pursued what I pursued in media and in television, and then eventually in podcasting, which to me was my own weird form of radio.
Well, that's what it is.
It's like Clayton radio. That's what podcasting is to me.
You're right, yeah.
If it wasn't for them. And as we talked about all those personalities through the 80s and 90s on CHFI.
That day that you were shadowing, like, do you remember the full lineup? Like, is that the Brother Bill era? Like, do you remember... could you do that? No?
On the spot?
Well, yeah, of course. That's the whole... No? Okay.
No, on the
okay
spot.
If you can't.
I'm going to cut it. Watch. This is the power of editing. I'm just going to cut it in afterwards as if I responded really smart. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, you don't say. It was actually... It would have been, I think, 2001.
I just wondered, like, because you start with Humble and Fred and then May Potts...
Well, see, I left. After we ducked down for part of Humble and Fred, and then I had to go back to the...
Wait a minute. Mojo Radio launches in 2001, I feel like Humble and Fred. Dean Blundell comes in. Are you sure it's 2001?
So that's 2000.
Yeah, it must have been just before the Mojo launch, right? Because
I remember
what happens is Humble and Fred leave 102 for 640. Mojo Radio.
Right.
And Dean Blundell
Was
is
that in
recruited
2000?
I feel like it was, well, it's definitely pre 9/11. That's 100%. I think it was early 2001, maybe. But maybe really early 2001. Because, and May Potts is she was on 102. She also moves to Mojo, which she told me is one of the worst decisions she made or whatever.
That she made.
She regrets that one. But Humble and Fred, in hindsight, so Humble and Fred go to 640 Mojo, and Dean Blundell is recruited out of Windsor to take over mornings on 102, and this is early 2000s, I'd say. 2001, I'm going to say.
Can I remember the lineup?
Yeah.
I can't. I know what grade I was. I thought I was in grade 11. Maybe it was.
Well, I only know it's pre
9/11,
but I don't know. I'm sure it's early 2001, but this could easily be 2000 that you were
So
doing
I
this.
would have gone in November of whatever year
2000.
I went in 2000.
November 2001. Humble and Fred are on Mojo Radio,
and I finished grade 11 2001. So that makes sense. The wealth of knowledge you bring.
It's kind of useless, but at least with podcasting, somebody appreciates it. Maybe
I appreciate the fact that you're so generous, not just with your time, but with what you've learned. I've learned a ton just sitting here, so thank you.
No, thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate that. I like to end every podcast the same way, Mike, and I'm hoping you can help me out.
Okay.
I believe that big things are influenced by small things, and I believe that we can all better ourselves each day by paying attention to the smallest of things, and that's eating our vegetables. And so I ask everyone at the end of every podcast to please, please, please be good to yourself and
eat your vegetables.
Yes! He's got it.